Every time you see an iPhone commercial showing someone stranded in the wilderness, hitting that emergency SOS button and getting saved by a satellite, that satellite wasn't Apple's. It was SpaceX's. It was owned by a small company called Globalstar. And as of April 14th, that company belongs to Amazon. Amazon just paid $11.5 billion to buy the satellite network that powers your iPhone's Emergency SOS, Find My, and satellite messaging features. And at the exact same time, Apple signed a deal to keep using it, which means Apple is now paying Amazon every time you send a text from a dead zone. This is one of the weirdest deals in tech this year. Let me explain what just happened. On April 14th, Amazon announced it was acquiring Globalstar for $11.57 billion. The offer is $90 per share, either in cash or Amazon stock, with the cash portion capped at 40% of the total. That's a premium of over 30% above Globalstar's stock price before the deal leaked, and it's one of Amazon's biggest acquisitions outside of retail in the company's history. They have a project called Kuiper, a plan to put thousands of low Earth orbit satellites into space to offer broadband internet, the same way Starlink does. Amazon has been launching Kuiper satellites, but they were way behind SpaceX. Starlink already has millions of customers. Kuiper had a handful of test users. Buying Globalstar does three things at once. It gives Amazon an existing satellite constellation that's already in orbit. It gives Amazon Spectrum licenses in countries all over the world, licenses that take years to get, and it gives Amazon expertise in direct device satellite communication, the exact technology that lets your phone talk to a satellite without a dish. Amazon is rebranding everything. Project Kuiper is now called Amazon Leo, short for Low Earth Orbit. And Amazon Leo is no longer just a broadband project, it's a full stack satellite business that can compete with Starlink on every front. Here's where this deal gets genuinely weird. Globalstar's biggest and most important customer is Apple. When Apple launched the iPhone 14 in 2022 with satellite-based Emergency SOS, they didn't build the satellite network themselves. They signed a long-term deal with Globalstar. Apple reportedly paid for the upgrades to Globalstar's ground stations, helped fund new satellites, and in exchange got priority access to the network for iPhone users. Every emergency SOS message, every Find My ping from a phone with no cell service, every iMessage sent over satellite on iPhone 15, 16, and 17, all of it runs on Globalstar's network. So when Amazon announced it was buying Globalstar, everyone in the tech industry had the same question. What happens to Apple? Well, the answer came within hours of the acquisition announcement. Apple and Amazon simultaneously announced a new partnership. Apple is signing on to use Amazon Leo, the new expanded network for future iPhone and Apple Watch satellite services. Think about what that means. Apple just publicly chose Amazon over SpaceX, over Starlink, over T-Mobile's partnership with Starlink, over AT&T's partnership with AST SpaceMobile. Apple chose the company that Elon Musk beat to market, but just happened to own the infrastructure Apple already depended on. It's a forced marriage, but both sides are smiling. Apple gets a bigger, more capable network going forward. Amazon gets Apple's hardware integration, which is the ultimate stamp of credibility in consumer satellite. Here's the part that should genuinely shock you. Amazon beat SpaceX to buy Globalstar. According to reportings from multiple sources, SpaceX was also in talks to acquire Globalstar. Elon Musk's company has been trying to consolidate the direct-to-device satellite market. They already have a partnership with T-Mobile, and that lets T-Mobile customers send text over Starlink. They have cash. They have lots of cash. They have launch capacity. They had every reason to want Globalstar. It seems Amazon outbid them. This is the first time in years that Amazon has actually won a head-to-head against SpaceX in the space business. SpaceX has dominated launches, dominated constellations, dominated government contracts, but Globalstar's board accepted Amazon's offer. So why, you may ask? Well, first, Amazon's valuation premium was aggressive. 30% above the pre-leak price is a lot of money, and Globalstar shareholders have been waiting years for an exit. Second, and this is the strategic angle Globalstar's relationship with Apple made them uniquely valuable to Amazon. If SpaceX had bought Globalstar, Apple might have walked away from the partnership because Apple and Musk have been publicly feuding about satellite deals for years. By selling to Amazon, Globalstar preserved the Apple relationship and added a second massive anchor customer to the deal. Amazon didn't just buy satellites. They literally bought Apple. Let me break down exactly what Amazon walks away with. First, Spectrum. Globalstar owns valuable frequency bands. specifically licenses in the S-band across multiple countries. Spectrum is the bottleneck in satellite business. You cannot launch a direct-to-device satellite service without license frequency allocations. Amazon just bought a global spectrum portfolio in one move, which would have taken them months. Second is the existing infrastructure. Globalstar has over 40 satellites in orbit right now, plus a network of ground stations across Americas, Europe, Africa, and Asia. Those grounding stations are not cheap to build and not easy to permit. Amazon can leverage this infrastructure immediately instead of waiting years to build. And third, direct-to-device expertise. This is the hardest part of the satellite business, making a tiny phone antenna talk to a satellite hundreds of miles above the Earth. Globalstar's engineers have been solving this problem for over a decade, specifically for Apple. Amazon just acquired that talent and IP. And fourth, Apple. The ongoing revenue from Apple's iPhone satellite services alone is estimated to be hundreds of millions of dollars per year, and growing as Apple expands satellite features beyond Emergency SOS into full iMessage, Find My, and eventually voice. And fifth, this is the biggest strategic one, competitive positioning. Amazon Leo can now launch a consumer product on day one. Every iPhone sold from today forward will be running on Amazon's network. That's a customer base that SpaceX cannot replicate easily because SpaceX does not control any major phone manufacturer's satellite stack. So what does this do to Starlink? Well, they have over 5 million active users or subscribers. They launch satellites every week. They have billions in revenue. But the direct-to-device market, the phone satellite market, is different. It's where the growth is. Every new iPhone, every new Samsung, every new Pixel, all of them are adding satellite connectivity. Starlink's strategy was to be the default provider through carrier partnerships. T-Mobile, Rogers in Canada, One NZ in New Zealand. Amazon just skipped the carriers entirely. They went straight to the handset maker, Apple. Doesn't care which carrier you use, Apple only cares about the iPhone, and the iPhone is now in Amazon Leo. That's a huge strategic win. It also explains why Amazon was willing to pay such a big premium. Owning the Apple relationship is probably worth more than the 40 plus satellites and Spectrum licenses combined. Apple sells over 200 million iPhones a year. Every one of them is a potential Amazon Leo user. Now, Starlink's response will be interesting to watch. They might try to buy a competing direct-to-device company. AST Space Mobile is the obvious candidate. They might push harder on career deals to lock in the Android ecosystem. Or they might just keep doing what they're doing and trust that their massive constellation advantage eventually wins. But for the next few years, the satellite phone market just became a two-horse race. Amazon plus Apple versus SpaceX plus T-Mobile. And the company that used to power your iPhone's Emergency SOS, now owned by the same company that sells you toilet paper. That's the Globalstar deal. $11.5 billion, Amazon beating SpaceX, Apple switching satellite providers without moving a single satellite, and the quiet transformation of the company that used to be a small satellite business into the foundation of Amazon's next trillion-dollar bet. Thank you for listening. I will catch you later. Catch you on the next one. Bye-bye. Bye-bye now.